What's going on, movie lovers, and welcome to Top 10 Beyond the Screen. My name is Johnny Rogers, and if you happen to be new here, we cover everything from celebrities and influencers to television and movies, so if you're down with that, then just tap that subscribe button to join our notification squad. And make sure you stay all the way until the end because you won't believe our number one spot. I also must preface this list by saying that everything I'm about to talk about is purely theory-based, some of which will be difficult to hear. That being said, you should not take any of these theories as factual until you look at the evidence yourself to make your own assumptions about the show and the characters involved. Plus, if you haven't watched the show, this is your spoiler alert. With that in mind, let's get right into today's list of the top 10 craziest Tiger King theories. In at number 10, John Finlay's teeth. As many of you know, the majority of the Netflix docuseries was filmed over the course of several years, meaning that we got to see each of the respective characters at various stages in their life, including moments from the present day where they reflected on what happened. John Finlay was engaged to Joe Exotic, and the entire time he had maybe 3 or 4 teeth to his name. According to Doc Antle, this was all for the show. During an interview with Us Weekly, Doc said John was forced to take his teeth out for the series. He had bridge work done, I guess he did a lot of meth as a kid, but the show wanted him portrayed a certain way, so the teeth had to come out. He had a full set of teeth before taping. Leave me a comment down below if you think that he got his teeth after the show or if he took them out before the Netflix docuseries. In at number 9, the Scarface inspiration. In the documentary, we meet a man named Mario Tebro. He insists that he was the inspiration for the character of Tony Montana in Scarface, mainly because he too dealt cocaine in the 1980s and owned some tigers to protect his home and cover up his shady business practices. Another theory suggests that this is all an act to deter viewers from looking at him as the bad guy. Even though he is definitely a bad guy and has done some very illegal things, much like Tony Montana, we view him as this kind of cool, law-breaking character. The theory they suggest that he was this inspiration is almost entirely false. Scarface is partly based on the protagonist of the original novel and the 1932 film adaptation, and by association, the character is also inspired by Al Capone. According to Oliver Stone himself, Tony's last name was inspired by former NFL quarterback Joe Montana, Stone's favorite player. Not once, though, does he mention drawing inspiration from this guy. In at number 8, the studio fire. When it comes to a piece of property, being the studio, catching fire, it's sad, but you have to look at who had the most to gain from that scenario and who had the most to lose. In this theory, we're proposing that Joe Exotic had a lot more to gain. Director Rick Kirkham had his life's work in that studio that suddenly burned to the ground. He remembers dropping to his knees at just watching all of the work that he had just done be destroyed. Joe, on the other hand, recently found out that there was incriminating footage of him on those tapes. He also had an ongoing lawsuit with Carole Baskin. The studio that burned down was about to be searched for evidence pertaining to that case. Mysteriously though, a man was caught on footage going into the building hours beforehand and walking away with equipment including devices with an estimated 60,000 hours of footage. This also came after Joe had an argument with Rick over who owned his reality show. On the flip side, another theory suggests that Rick was paid $20,000 by Carole Baskin to destroy the studio, which would then call back to that surveillance showing the figure going into the building. Was Rick acting when he saw that fire, or did Joe burn it down to make a statement and gain sympathy? Let me know down in the comments below what you think. In at number 7, Doc Antle's cult. For starters, he calls himself Bhagavan Doc Antle. Oh, and in the Hindu culture, Bhagavan basically means God. Check 1 for the cult side. He also is polygamous. Check number 2 for the cult side. The bizarre thing about Doc in this documentary is that he doesn't really appear nearly as much as everyone else. But I'll tell you what, there's definitely much more going on there than they let on. He has several homes on the property for each of his wives, who also work on the property for $100 a week. According to theories circulating online, Doc gives contracts to his wives and apprentices that last 2 years. These contracts do not allow them to leave, and it does not allow them to even contact their own family. I'm sorry, but that doesn't seem like proper business practices for the owner of a zoo. Seems more like the rules of a cult. In at number 6, Cardi B will free Joe Exotic. Now this isn't a very far-fetched theory. Matter of fact, Kim Kardashian West was able to pull her celebrity status to meet with the president so that she could get a woman out of jail. She freed 63-year-old grandmother Alice Marie Johnson, who was sentenced to a mandatory life sentence plus 25 years after being convicted for drug trafficking. So when Cardi B started tweeting that she was watching Tiger King on Netflix, this theory started to boil. Cardi first tweeted out, "They did Joe so dirty over and over again," followed up by, "About to start a GoFundMe account for Joe." he shall be free. Now, I obviously don't know how much Cardi B knows about what Joe is charged with, as she mentioned previously that she sort of half watched the show and then got lost. Regardless, if Cardi B really wanted to get Joe Exotic out of prison, we're sure she can make that happen. In at number 5, Doc and Carole. While the docuseries may twist the narrative to make these two seem like bitter rivals, or at the very least regular rivals, following the documentary, people really started to focus in on each of the people involved, and sure enough, articles began popping up about a 2001 VMA performance. Evan Ross Katz tweeted out this photo collage of then and now, and not only does it show Doc Antle working with Britney Spears, but seeing Carole Baskin next to her at a different award show invokes the thought that she may be hiding her past in this documentary. Baskin is an animal rights advocate, so using her tigers for a Britney Spears show would definitely be wrong, but yet, there she is. The fact that they both worked for Britney Spears cannot be considered a coincidence either. That's more of a connection you tell your fellow Tiger King. In at number 4, Doc's animal abuse. Now, putting his cult aside for a moment here, we have to focus back in on this wildlife preserve in South Carolina that he and his 4 wives are running. There are several pieces of evidence that would seem to support this theory. First of all, upon seeing the trailer, his knee-jerk reaction was to get a lawyer. Recently, the USDA fined him and his facility with hefty 4-figure fines. Plus, close to the end of 2019, his entire facility was raided on a search and seizure case pertaining to some lions that he had sold to a private zoo in Virginia. Additionally, there has been rumors that he fed Valium to his animals to keep them docile for shows so that he wouldn't need a leash on the animal. Joe Exotic used to actually sell cubs to Antle for a while until Jeff took over and put the kibosh on that. His reasoning was that he believed Doc was putting the cubs in gas chambers after they could no longer make him money. The film also supports this theory by displaying how expensive it is to keep fully grown tigers. In at number 3, hide the evidence. Joe was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison for a conviction that included 2 counts of murder for hire and an additional 17 other crimes pertaining to violations of the Lacey Act, which prohibits the trade of illegal wildlife. Following his arrest, authorities searched the property and found the remains of 5 tigers. Some are suggesting that tigers, though, weren't the only thing that he buried on the property. Apparently, it was a sacred rule for Joe that if people were attacked, he would shoot the human over shooting one of his lions. This theory begins to hold water when you look back at the Louis Theroux documentary called America's Most Dangerous Pets. On the show, there was a strange moment where he told the host he would sooner shoot him than the lion if it came down to it. In at number 2, Travis Maldonado. Now, this one is a very sensitive subject. It involves theories surrounding the suicide of Travis. In the documentary, they covered this moment and it is jaw-dropping to say the least. They used the actual camera footage, but Travis is never seen in this angle, just the man who witnessed it. The incident was viewed as an accident because as Travis raised the gun to his temple, he laughed, telling Joe's campaign manager, Joshua, that the magazine wasn't in the gun, which would then in turn mean that the gun couldn't fire, but a round left in the chamber was released and killed him immediately. A theory is now suggesting that this wasn't an accident and that Travis had indeed planned to do this. The evidence they cite to back these claims is his constant love of guns throughout the series. At one point, Joe even remarks that Travis was lazy because all he wanted to do was go shoot his guns down at the lake. So that kind of makes you wonder if he was fully aware that the gun would fire. Again though, it's one of those theories where you're like, what's the point in discussing this? He's gone. It was an unfortunate tragedy to all involved, especially to his mother, and Joshua had to witness the whole thing happen, but a theory nonetheless. Last but not least, on our number 1 spot, Carole's husband. The big question on everyone's mind throughout this roller coaster is, did Carole Baskin kill her husband? There's plenty of evidence to support that she could have, but the problem with this theory is that Joe Exotic is hell-bent on proving that she did it. The reason why him piling on doesn't help the investigation is because of his bias towards Carole. I mean, he did hire someone to kill her, so really how credible could this guy be? That's at least most people's opinion on the matter. Carole and her first husband Don Lewis met in 1981 when she was just 19. The two purchased several bobcats together and ran the sanctuary until Don suddenly vanished in 1997. At the time, the two had been arguing a lot and Lewis was preparing to divorce Carole. 2 months prior to his disappearance, he had filed court documents for domestic violence claiming that Carole threatened to shoot him. There's a lot more to this though that probably would take an entire video to unpack, but if you want to learn more, you know where the Google is. And that has been the top 10 craziest Tiger King theories. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to our editors for making me look so good. If you enjoyed this video, show us some love here by tapping that like and subscribe button. Plus, don't forget to leave us a comment down below with your thoughts on this list. And for more videos like this one, all you gotta do is tap that playlist when it pops up on the screen. From Top 10 Beyond the Screen, my name is Johnny Rogers, saying until next time, stay classy.